Welcome to You Have My Sword. In this episode, we'll be asking the question, hey, what'd that mouth do? Let's talk about it. The Mouth of Sauron, otherwise known as Lieutenant of Barad-dûr, Messenger of Mordor, Emissary of the Dark Lord, and Ambassador of Sauron. And it's interesting, as the name of the Mouth of Sauron itself poses a bit of an inconsistency in the narrative. So, Aragorn mentions that the name Sauron, which means abominable, is the name used by his enemies, and according to Aragorn, Sauron himself did not permit the name pronounced, implying it would be strange for a servant of Sauron to have a title that includes the word Sauron. Although, at one point before the War of the Ring, Sauron declares himself openly, making himself and his mission known, which may give the mouth credit to use Sauron's name freely, but we have no way of knowing this for sure. It's just kind of interesting to think about. In a very early manuscript, the name of the messenger, the Mouth, is said to be Mordu, apparently meaning black darkness or black night. This likely was the Mouth's working name and not necessarily the name of the man he was before his corruption. Regardless, the Mouth of Sauron was one of Sauron's most devoted servants, serving as his herald and messenger and as the lieutenant of the Tower of Barad-dûr at the time of the War of the Ring. His true name was forgotten, even to himself. The Mouth of Sauron was at one point a man whose early history is almost totally unknown. He was one of the Black Númenóreans, who were men who established their dwellings in Middle-earth during the years of Sauron's domination and worshipped him. Just for context and clarity, Barad-dûr is also called the Dark Tower, and through this episode I will refer to it as just the Dark Tower for simplicity. Okay, so initially self-proclaimed as the King's Men, Black Númenóreans descended from those who were loyal to the Númenórean crown, but were in opposition to the Valar and the relations with the elves. After Sauron's fellowship with Númenor under the fake identity of Annatar, these Númenóreans listened to his words and were quickly and easily corrupted by him. If you remember from our episode about the Undying Lands, I mentioned how Sauron, disguised as Annatar, convinced Númenórean men to sail to the Undying Lands, promising them immortality, and, spoiler alert, that did not go down as expected. Okay, so the Black Númenóreans worship the darkness and its lords, Melkor, and later on, Sauron, and oppressed the men left in Middle-earth. Ever since, they were the servants of the enemy and bitter adversaries of the Dunedain. The Mouth of Sauron entered the service of the Dark Tower when it rose once again around 3rd Age 2951, after Sauron re-emerged from Dol Guldur. And during this time, the Mouth learned sorcery and rose to become the Lieutenant of the Dark Tower and directly commanded the orc armies of Gorgoroth. He was one of the very, very few servants of Mordor who communicated directly with Sauron. The Dark Tower was completed by Sauron in the Second Age and was destroyed following the victory of the last alliance of elves and men at the very end of the Second Age. The rebuilding of the Dark Tower began in the Third Age, 67 years before the War of the Ring. And, as we know, as the Dark Tower was held together by Sauron's power, it collapsed upon the destruction of the One Ring. We don't really know for sure how old the Mouth of Sauron was or how long he exactly was in Sauron's service. There's a bunch of ways to speculate about this, but again, we don't know for sure. So, during the War of the Ring, the Mouth was getting up to shit, typical weird, evil shit, annoying ass shit. He showed up in front of the Host of the West, which is essentially a council or faction consisting of all kinds. So it would include kings, elves, and even the Valar, kind of like the Avengers. Anyways, the Mouth demanded to talk to someone in charge, and Aragorn was there and was like, hey, I'm a cool king, I'll talk to you. And the Mouth fully dismissed Aragorn's claim as king, saying, and who is this? Isildur's heir? It takes more to make a king than a broken elvish blade, and went on to again demand who had authority. Aragorn gave the Mouth such a look that it scared the absolute piss out of him, and the mouth cried out to remind them that he was an ambassador and that he was not to be attacked. This little pussy shows up demanding attention and then cries when he gets it. Okay, my dude. It's been noted many times in Middle-earth politics that ambassadors, messengers, and heralds, what have you, cannot be harmed for any reason. This is kind of a reoccurring theme in fantasy in general, actually. Gandalf assured him that he would not be attacked. They understood he was a messenger. It's all good. He was being a dick, but they're playing by the rules here. So the mouth took Gandalf to be the delegate and the person in charge. So then the mouth started pulling shit out of his purse and showed them Sam's sword, a great cloak with an elven brooch, and Frodo's mithril vest, and said that the fate of the spy would depend on their actions, further insinuating that if they did not comply, that the spy would be tortured indefinitely. The mouth then went on to say that the Hobbit would be allowed to go free so long as the Middle-earth Avengers agreed to Sauron's terms. And what were his terms, you ask? Oh, nothing crazy, just that one, that the rabble of Gondor and its deluded allies withdraw beyond the Anduin River, that they swear oaths to never again assail Sauron the Great in arms, open or secret, that all lands east of the Anduin River would belong to Sauron in perpetuity, and all lands west up to the Gap of Rohan would be disarmed and pay tribute to Mordor, and last but not least, that Sauron would allow them to govern their own affairs so long as they helped to rebuild Isengard, which would then be ruled by a master more reliable than Saruman. And we can go on to presume that this would be the mouth himself. Okay, so obviously the answer here was no fucking way, dude. Absolutely not. Gandalf got up and was like, absolutely not. This is too much for the ransom of one servant. Gandalf also doubted that Sauron would keep his word, calling him the, and I quote, base master of treachery. Sauron is going to have to ice that burn until the fall of the Dark Tower, for real. Gandalf demanded that the prisoner be brought in for proof of life, but the mouth only responded with, these are the terms, take them or leave them. So Gandalf, my dude, responded, screaming, these we will take, and seized the cloak, the sword, and the mithril coat, all while utterly rejecting Sauron's terms and ordered the mouth to get the fuck out, as they had not come to bargain with Sauron, much less one of his goofy-ass slaves. Enraged and fearful at the same time, the mouth fled back to the gate and set Mordor's forces upon the west. So he essentially rolled up to Mordor with a big, a wizard was mean to me energy and rallied the homies to go jump him. Now, as far as media goes, the Mouth of Sauron is depicted in a few installments, so I'll give you guys the rundown. In the 1980s, The Return of the King, the Mouth of Sauron briefly appears at the Black Gate. In this adaptation, he was voiced by Don Messick, and oh, by the way, this is an animated film, and the mouth is about the goofiest looking motherfucker you've ever seen, and it fucking rips. I'll post some screenshots on the You Have My Sword Instagram. You have to see this dude. Okay, so in the 2003 The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King film, the live-action film, the Mouth of Sauron does not appear in the theatrical cut of the movie, but he does appear in the extended version, played by an unrecognizable Bruce Spence. His helmet, with the words Lamin Gorthwar, Sindarin for voice of Sauron or voice of the abominable, written on it, covers his face, except for his mouth, which is horribly diseased and disfigured by all the evil he has spoken, and disproportionately large, creating quite an unsettling effect. In fact, much of this spectacle is a result of CGI effects. In fact, Jackson conceived this idea long after the footage had been shot and asked his special effects team to create the effect digitally. The extended DVD cast commentary mentions that Jackson considered different depictions of the character, such as having Kate Winslet, who starred in Heavenly Creatures, another Jackson film, play the role, partially to emphasize the temptations Aragorn was facing. Kate Winslet has great jugs. She could be the jugs of Sauron instead, so I fully see Jackson's vision here, to be honest. Now, in the movie itself, Aragorn decapitates the Mouth of Sauron with his sword. This sequence is often criticized by purists as through human history, it was considered a crime of war to execute messengers or heralds. In the book, the Mouth actually specifically points out that as an ambassador, he is protected by the laws of war, which I mentioned earlier when he was at the council and got scared and was like, I'm a messenger, you guys can't fucking touch me. And Gandalf does acknowledge this during their Avengers meeting. And Gandalf goes on to say this. Though Aragorn did not stir nor move hand to weapon, the other quailed and gave back as if menace was the blow. I am a herald and an ambassador, and may not be assailed, he cried out. Where such laws hold, said Gandalf, it is also the custom for ambassadors to use less insolence, but no one has threatened you. You have naught to fear from us. And that is from Book 5, Chapter 10, The Black Gate Opens. So again, just reiterating that he's a bitch and was like, I'm a messenger. You can't fucking, kill the messenger. And Gandalf's like, yeah, I know, but you could also not be a huge dick about it. So yeah, the Mouth was a pussy and was low-key scared of everyone, leaning into being a mere messenger whenever possible to protect himself. Talk enough shit, though, and the laws of war go out the window. Now, in The Lord of the Rings Online, the Mouth of Sauron is one of the Gurziel, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly, which are the mortal servants of Sauron, whom through the dark arts he had made ageless during the Second Age. Although, unlike wraiths, they remain bound to their physical bodies and can, in fact, be killed. First appearing at the Black Gate in a sequence near identical to that in the book, the Mouth of Sauron survives the demise of his master and names himself Dulgabeth, the Black Word, Sauron's heir. The Mouth of Sauron is later killed by the player with the help of 2 rangers. And with that, we will end this episode. Your homework is to watch the Return of the King extended edition scene that features the Mouth of Sauron while brushing your teeth. And as always, I hope you learned something. Oh, actually, speaking of learning shit, how do you guys feel about space shit? Not like shitting in space, but learning about space. My network has a podcast called Settle the Stars, a science-based podcast about, well, you guessed it, space. So if you've ever been interested to see how you would handle your own shit on different planets in our solar system, I suggest you give it a listen. It's the closest we'll get to space without being a billionaire. Alexander Wynn, host of Settle the Stars, walks us through terraforming our solar system every Friday, wherever you get your podcasts, and guess what? You can listen to the trailer right fucking now.
Hey folks, after 14 months of 2020 chaos, the Settle the Stars podcast is finally returning. Tune in at youtube.com/Edgeworks Entertainment or on your favorite podcast platform for weekly episodes about space exploration, cutting-edge science, and what exactly it will take for humanity to settle the stars.
Welcome back from the trailer. Pretty sick shit, right? Highly suggest you give Settle the Stars a listen. I'm a big fan of the podcast and Alexander himself. Now, as always, you can head over to youhavemyswordpodcast.com for links to our socials and Patreon. If you support on Patreon or Ko-fi, you get access to my Discord, which has proven to be a wholesome shit show. I've been really enjoying using Discord and talking about fantasy and cum with all of you, and I really, truly hope to see more of you guys there. As always, you have my sword, and hey, brush your teeth.
Edgeworks Nebula.